Hello, hello, hello to all my beloved followers from all over the world. Welcome to the very third podcast of the Talking Drum Show. I'm honored and pleased today to be bringing you the third episode, the third podcast of the Talking Drum Show. Today's topic is a very, very, very interesting one, and I hope all of us are going to benefit from it. So tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to watch us. Please share this podcast wherever you are. Please share it right now while it's going live. I entreat you so that other people can watch us live. If you're on Facebook, thank you for subscribing to my YouTube channel, YouTube, Facebook, and all of you out there. Thank you for following and subscribing to this podcast. It's here to stay. I'm going to greet a few of you in Africa. Juwa, this is crew. It says welcome. Akwaba, this is Tree. It says welcome. Karibu, this is Swahili in East Africa. Welcome. And if you're from a French speaking country, I say to you, bienvenue. Welcome to the Talking Drum Show. I'm so excited today. I can't wait. The topic on discussion today is, can the dead hear or see the living? Can the dead hear or see the living? Is today's topic. I can't wait. Many people wonder. I know it is quite difficult to explain spiritual or metaphysical matters, especially to non believers or non religious people. However, one may wonder, it, we can see God, we can hear God, we cannot touch God. But does that negate the fact that God exists? Without wasting any further time, I'm going to bring on board my guest, my beautiful, loving, and sweet guest. She's a mother, she's a grandmother, she's a wife, she's a teacher, she's a catechist. Without wasting any time, I'm going to bring on board Mrs. Margaret Stump. For me, I call her Margie because she's a friend.
Are you ready for me?
Hello, Miss Margie.
Hi,
Welcome
Dee.
to the show.
Thank you. Glad to
Welcome
be
to the show.
here.
How you doing today? How you doing today?
Oh, just fine. I'm hoping we get a chance to go walking together again soon.
I know I love walking. It's an amazing feeling.
Yeah,
Thank you for accepting to do this. Thank you,
I'm
Miss
happy
Margie.
to do that.
Awesome. Can you please introduce yourself to my thousands followers out there? There's some
Oh,
Africa, Europe, and the Americas watching us live right now.
okay.
Please, who is
Well,
Miss Margie Stump?
well, my full name is Margaret Palcher Stump. So Palcher is my maiden name, and when I got married when I was 31 years old to my husband, I kept my maiden name as my middle name. I don't hyphenate it. But I love being connected still with my family I grew up with. But I also want to be my husband's wife and have our children all have the same name as we do. So I went with that way. My friends and family call me Margie. So since you're my friend, that's what you're calling me. And that's great for this podcast. Um, you were, I grew up in Kansas City, Kansas, in the United States. And when I married my husband, I moved a little bit away, not far at all, just across the state line, not too many miles. And that's where my husband lives. So I'm in Missouri now, Kansas City, Missouri. They're twin cities, I guess you'd call it, across the river from each other. I used to be, I went to college at Rockhurst College and got a degree, Bachelor of Science in Mathematics. I've always loved numbers since I was in first grade and wanted to go to college and become become a mathematician. Out of college, I was a computer programmer at Kansas City Life Insurance Company. And then when Bill and I had our first child, I quit that job, even though I was making a good salary and he was working at a small grocery store. We just thought we were going to leave it to God to find a way for us to get by so I could stay home and raise our children. We had ended up having 4 children, and I homeschooled them all the way through grade school. So that would be through 8th grade, about 13 or 14 years old at that point. And then now I substitute teach at 3 of the Catholic schools around here. And I could make more money doing that at the public schools, but I like to do it at the Catholic schools because if the topic comes up or if for some reason it's helpful to them for me to be able to share something about our faith, I do that. And I couldn't do that in a
Okay.
public school. So that's kind of where I am right now. I also am halfway through the training for catechesis of the Good Shepherd as a catechist. There's 3 different levels, and I'm in halfway through the second level. So then
Awesome.
it takes 2 years for each level. So by the
Right.
time I finish it up, I'll be certified to be a catechist for ages 3 through 12. Right now, I'm certified for 3 through 6, and I help out with the 6 through 9-year-olds. So that's where my
Beautiful.
life is now.
Beautiful. Great. Good having you, Margie. I am excited.
Thank
I'm
you.
excited. You're amazing. Great, great background there,
Yeah.
professional
We,
background and all that. We're going to jump right in. Question number 1. Again, guys, if you're just joining us, the topic tonight is, can the dead hear or see the living? Can the dead hear or see the living? And as a routine on this show, we ask a tradition. We ask 10 questions to our guests, and you will respond to the questions. And
mhm.
each questions, if I have a follow-up question, I'm going to ask you. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Miss Margie, again for accepting to do this. Help inform
Mhm.
people out there. Question number 1. Let me begin by asking directly: can the dead see or hear the living?
Well, I would say that the dead in heaven, kind of hard to call them the dead, actually. So I'm going to say souls in the afterlife because they're pretty alive, not their bodies, but their souls are alive in heaven. If they're in heaven, they're now with God and they are not limited in the same way they are when they're on earth in their human bodies. So, yes, if they're in heaven, they can hear and see us and know what's happening in our lives. I believe that. If they're in hell, however, they would be in torment, and they not only would not be able to communicate with us, but they wouldn't care about us at that point. If you're in pain, and that kind of pain as hell would have, you just would not be aware of anything else but your own pain, which is sad to think. You don't want anybody there. And then there's kind of a halfway point, which you might call
Right.
it kind of like the waiting room for heaven. So people that have not rejected God. Now, not everybody knows about God, so God takes that into consideration if they have not had that chance to get to know Him. But if they've actively rejected God, then that there's not really a place for them. But if they have not done that and they've been trying to live a good life, they could end up in purgatory, which is a place where, not exactly a place, but a process of purification, because you can't stand before the throne of God if you're still attached to your sins. So I don't know about you, but I feel like I've got a long way to go yet, that I still have attachment to sin and things on a daily basis. There's something I do that is not what you would call perfection.
Right.
And so we need to be purified in order to be able to stand before God. So that's people in purgatory. Some people think are aware of us, and others think that they are not, because they're going through that purification process, and that's what they're focused on. But if once they get to heaven, they'll be able to communicate, not necessarily communicate. I'm just going to say we can communicate with them because they're aware of us. They're not necessarily going
Great.
to answer back.
Great answer. For the benefit of our viewers, what and non-Catholics, what is purgatory briefly, please?
Yeah. So if you are a believer and believe in the Bible, there are references in the Bible that you can find that indicate that there must be some process between earth and heaven. I won't go into specific passages. I'd have to
Right.
grab a Bible and figure out what I could find there, but I know I've seen them. So, but if you're not, it still makes sense that if there is a heaven and there is a hell, which I definitely believe, there has to be that in between place, because you just cannot step in front of God with still being a jealous person or a angry person, or some other attachment to a sin. So you just have to go through that purification, and it is like a process of that. It's considered to be something that is a painful process, because sometimes you have to go through pain before you get to the the glory, let's put it that way. So that's what purgatory is. So most of
Great,
us are going
great.
to end up there at some point in time, unless we go to one of the other ones directly.
Thank you so much, Miss Margie. Question number two. I guess you've already touched on it, but I'm going to ask the questions anyway. I guess to believe in communication between the dead and the living, one has to believe in life after death. How would you explain this concept outside religious faith?
Well, I would say, first of all, that, okay, let's take a person that is in the hospital and they're on life support. You can, at some point, there may come a time when that person, they know this person is dead. And you can't just keep the life support going after someone's dead. They won't be alive. They won't be alive. Once they're dead, they're not going to be alive unless it's a very brief moment, like when people get resuscitated. But if that has not worked, you can't just keep it going and then they'll be alive again. So there's something, our consciousness is separate from our body. So just because our body dies doesn't mean our consciousness has to die.
Right.
And if you look at people that have been through what they call near-death experiences, where they have been clinically considered dead and then they are resuscitated shortly after, many of them, I'd say probably, I think I read it was somewhere like 15 or some percent of those people do report having out of body experiences where they seem to have, their spirit seems to have emerged from their body, and they're looking down at the people working on them, trying to revive them, and they can see what's happening in the room. Afterwards, when they've been resuscitated, they can tell you who was in there, what they were saying, even though their eyes were closed. I am so sorry. My battery is running low. I didn't know that was going to happen. I'm very sorry. I'm going to have to run up and grab a cable, or I'm going to run out of
That's
power.
okay.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. So, viewers, as Miss Margie has been saying, she to the first question, she did acknowledge that yes, the dead can see and hear the living, which is very, very, it's a very valid information. I mean, some people, there are some non-believers out there, non-spiritual people that have their different opinion to this, but from a spiritual standpoint, it is true that yes, the dead can see and hear the living, depending on where they're at. 'Cause like she said, if you're in hell, most definitely you would not be able to see or hear the living. Man, the dead. So my mom, depending where she is, I'm believing she's in heaven or purgatory. She can see and hear me. That's a great feeling to have. I'm excited. I can't wait, man, how this is gonna go forth. Welcome back, Miss Margie.
I was
Welcome back.
praying as I ran upstairs to find the cable and the cord. I was praying to God that please don't let that run out of power before I get back and we have to start the whole process
I
over
know
again.
that would be
Thank God.
something. That's amazing, Margie. The dead can actually see and hear us, depending where they're at.
Yes. And what was the question we were on right now, though? There was
We were on second question number 2. It says, which you've already summarized in a way. I believe in communicating with between the dead and the living. One has to believe in life
Oh,
after death.
okay.
How
Okay.
would you explain this concept outside of religious faith?
Yeah. So that's what I was saying, that the consciousness doesn't necessarily have to die just because the body dies. And those people who have experienced near death, they, oh, I mean, they're dead and then they come back, they're resuscitated. They do report having seen and heard things they shouldn't have been able to, because not only were they dead, but their eyes were closed. How did they see and hear all these things? So it has to be that spirit is separate from the body, can be separated from the body. And again, they often will then see a bright light and be drawn towards the light. It's often through a dark tunnel that they see the light. And then they go through there and they feel a very welcome and peaceful sensation. But there are some people who have a terrifying experience in near death. And either way, when they're resuscitated, it changes their life because they have seen something on the other side. And now they know that there is such a thing, that they aren't just gone once they die, and they want to live a better life.
Awesome. That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah.
Viewers, man, I can't wait to hear the other answers to the other questions. Question number three. Now, in the face of such questions, there will always be skeptics, people who doubt life after death or communication with between the living and the dead exists. What would you say to such people, the skeptics?
Yeah. Well, I would say to me, the clearest evidence is to look at responses that people have had from talking to people who are in the afterlife. So if you look at in our tradition, in our religious tradition, we pray to the saints in heaven. So we don't ask the saints to do something for us because they have no power of their own. We ask them to add their prayers to ours and to ask God for the help that we're requesting. And often there have been miracles that have happened because with no other explanation for them, no medical explanation, no scientific explanation of any kind, and they happen. So in response to a request. So if you look at one case in particular, look at Lourdes, France. That's where Our Lady of Lourdes, or Mary, the mother of Jesus, had appeared to three shepherd children. And this was in the early 1900s. 6 times she appeared to them. And on the sixth time, there were so many people who had heard about this. There were 70,000 people that came to see a promised miracle. And when that happened, it was pouring down rain. Just everybody was drenched. There was mud everywhere. And then at the point in time of the miracle, everybody saw the sun doing strange things. It seemed like it was spinning in the sky. It seemed like it was moving around, coming closer and farther from the earth. So there were sparks of color flying from it. Different things were reported. But all of these people, and they were not all faith believers. Many of them were skeptics, were even atheists. And they still experienced that miracle and saw that miracle. And then if you question that and say, oh, it was mass psychosis or something like that, well, how do you explain then the fact that everything was drenched with rain, but when this happened, the rain suddenly stopped, and then everything was completely dry afterwards? There was no mud. Everybody's clothes were dry. And so that's two miracles that
Right.
many people experienced, even though they weren't all believers. So that's pretty good proof. And there are other things where people have had responses from saints. I would say you don't really want to be talking to your deceased family members in a way that you're expecting them to have a conversation with you or anything. But you can talk with them and let them know how you're doing and do that. Just don't try to see them. Don't try to conjure them up or in any way make a physical type of contact with them.
Good, good. So to you skeptics, I hope this helps. Question number 4. Do clairvoyance and telepathy, the communication from one mind to another through extrasensory means, figure in any way when communicating with the dead?
When I've read about people like that, I don't think them usually communicating with the dead so much as maybe kind of knowing things that we don't experience with our senses, but not necessarily communicating with the dead for those things. I mean, there are some people like mediums and all that will try to do that. But as far as just that extrasensory perception type of thing, they don't necessarily try to communicate with the dead. And I don't think that there's enough scientific evidence behind that to be
that.
confident in it. So personally, I'm kind of a skeptic, but I know sometimes it seems quite likely that there are some people that experience things beyond our senses, our physical senses. But I'm not an expert on that. So I'm just going to say maybe.
Maybe, like
But
the
probably
skeptics will
not.
say. So question 5 is kind of similar to question 4. Say, what would you say about seance, a spiritualist meeting to receive communications from spirits? I've heard and read in several times that this medium could really make one communicate with their dead loved ones. What is your take on seance?
I unequivocally run the other way. Do not go get involved in any kind of a seance, anything that's actually is trying to communicate with the dead, that's a lot different than just saying a little prayer, to someone that
Hmm.
you think might be in heaven, because that's kind of like forbidden by God. You don't do that. You don't try to communicate with the dead. And the problem is, you may be wanting to be connected with a loved one that passed away. You may think you are hearing from that person, but you're not. It's going to be a demon, because you're getting into the demonic realm there when you try to reach out to the dead. So you could easily fall victim to a demon looking for the next person to possess. I Even like a Ouija board that seems harmless. Back when I
Hmm.
was in, I think, ninth grade, I went to a slumber party with my best friend at the time, and she had pulled out a Ouija board, and some of the girls kind of played around with that a little bit, and oh, it's moving, all this stuff. And they were asking silly questions, but it's really, that is a connection, trying to connect with the spirit world, and it's not a healthy thing to do. And there are people that have ended up with demonic interference in their lives because of a Ouija board being used as that gateway for the spirits to inhabit their bodies. I'd say stay away completely. No question about it.
Great, great, great response. So those of you who believe in seance, stop it. It's demonic and it's not right.
If
Question
you
number
if you're not, just say, if you're not sure about that, just read up, go on the internet and look, or whatever. Just read up on exorcists and the experiences they've had, and they with just there's a huge demand for them because there's a big demonic influence in the world right now, and they're just constantly being called by sometimes people that they think might be possessed are not, and they determine that, but many times there is possession involved, and you do not want to go through that. So listen to the experts. Exorcists are the experts on that, and they say stay away from any kind of connection, intentional connection with the spirit world like that, other than through prayer.
great, 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 great. Question number 6. If someone were to ask you to give proof of communication between the living and the dead, what examples or references would you give?
Well, again, I mean, I know some people myself that have been communicating, it seems like, with people in the afterlife. Often that's because they themselves are approaching death. So, like when my dad died, he was 72, and he had an identical twin. So that was my Uncle Charlie. 7 years after my dad died, his twin also died. But before, when he was in that process, in the last days of his life, his one of his sons was sitting by his bedside, and he heard him talking to my dad, having conversation with my dad. Not that he didn't hear my dad's voice, but he heard my Uncle Charlie having a conversation with my dad. And then there have been other people I know that have thought they were talking with someone from the afterlife, and they may well have been. It's a lot of people think that they have encountered someone in spirit form. And there's so many people that think that I think there may be something to that. But again, it's not something you should reach out and actively try to make that connection. But I think that from this experience of other people, you can say it's happened. Also, again, the miracles. There are so many times where miracles can have been documented, well documented. I was starting to say about Lourdes. There have been 70 well documented miracles. They have a team of medical and scientific experts that examine any claim to a miracle having occurred at Lourdes, at that site where Mary had appeared to the children. And they 70 times they've been able to absolutely rule out any medical reason for someone having a healing that went from an impossible to treat condition to complete healing. The most recent one, that lady is still, I can't remember what year it happened in, but she's still living. She couldn't walk without braces and on her back and on her legs, and a huge amount of pain medication in order to do that. After being at Lourdes, she was able to, 3 days later, she was walking and not needing a wheelchair and not in pain. So there's just no explanation for it. They have all the medical records that indicate she even had a twisted foot, which straightened out.
Right.
So yeah, you see miracles like that with no other explanation for them, and you know that, yeah, there's communication going on.
Right.
Right.
Right. Amazing. Amazing. So the story with your brother or your uncle and the speaking, do you do you think that was a form of seance?
No,
Do
I
you
don't
call
think it
that?
was a seance, because with a seance, you're calling up, trying to get those people to talk with you or appear with you or anything. My uncle, who was again in the dying process, I think he had one foot on the other side, and
Okay.
so I don't know if I think that my dad probably came to him,
Hmm.
not was called by me, but just came to him to kind of, help him be welcome to the other side. That's what I think. When
Awesome.
my mother passed away, she was 90 when she died, and um, I was she lived in the house with my two brothers, and uh, we were having hospice care in near the end there, but they were just there, a couple times a week or whatever, a few times a week, and the rest of the time we were taking care of her. So I was sleeping in her bed one night because we kind of knew it was coming soon, that she was kind of fading that weekend. I was in her bed, and then she was in a hospital bed in the same room. And when she went to bed, she was struggling to breathe, and my brother put her on the oxygen tank, so she was getting oxygen. And in the morning when I woke up, and I last saw her at about 3 in the morning. I had prayed by her bedside, and I was sitting there like writing a letter to my daughter and everything. Then I went to bed, and about 8 o'clock when I woke up, she had passed away. She had the sweetest smile on her face. And before she went to sleep, she was struggling to breathe. Now she just had this smile on her face. And I personally felt like my dad and my sister, I had 9 siblings, and one of my sisters had passed away at the age of 57. I felt like they came and took her hand and just led her to Jesus. So I, that's all. That's just what I felt about it. I can't prove that, but I
Right.
feel like that your family may come for you to lead you to
Hmm.
Jesus.
Awesome. That's amazing response, Miss Margie. Question number 7. How important is tradition or culture to this discussion? For example, most of us Africans believe in the living presence of our ancestors. Though they are dead, we believe they continue to be with us and influence our lives. Could you comment on this from the Western or American context, cultural context? There's this huge belief in Africa that even when we gather,
Mhm.
some of our elders would invoke, they will use some wine, pour on the ground, right, and call
Mhm.
out names of kings and chiefs. They believe they're present there
Mhm.
with them.
I would say, based on what you've mentioned there, that culturally, probably it sounds like the African way is more definite on that, of having let's say active inclusion of the loved ones on the other side. Um, in America, although a lot of people do think that it is possible to get some kind of communication from the dead, they're not going. In most cases, they're not going to actively include them in their
True.
lives. Now, some people will do things like, well, include prayer. I mean, I would say always pray for your loved ones. Just don't necessarily expect a response coming from the other side, but pray for them, because we don't know, they could be in purgatory and not in heaven.
Purgatory on
And
that,
if they're
right?
in purgatory, our prayers can actually be a benefit to them. So we want to do that on a regular basis. Pray for our loved ones. If they're already in heaven, our prayers don't go to waste, because God will apply those to all those people in purgatory that have nobody praying for them, because they don't know they should be praying for them. So I just think that, again, like when we have a family gathering, because we have a big family, we like to get together. A lot of us will be together on the 4th, on Independence Day. But We'll include our loved ones in our prayers before we sit down to eat. Before we bless the food, we will also remember our loved ones that aren't there with us anymore. So yeah, keep praying for them, and that's more the American way, I think.
Way.
So now,
Even
if you get into some
and
other
it,
traditions, like you said, like the
right.
Hispanic tradition, from
Yes.
people from Mexico, I think, are more likely to include the dead more in their life, I think.
In their lives.
Hmm.
And even for Catholics in Mass, the priest asks us to remember the dead,
Yeah,
as we
every
pray,
time. Hmm.
And during that time, I do pray for
Hmm.
my folks. Question number 8. No doubt religion cannot be divorced from this discussion. This brings us to the theme of faith. How are our faith commitments definitive of our belief in communications between the world of the dead and the world of the living? After all, some who have no care for religion will say it's all religious hocus pocus.
Yeah, they'll say that, all right. Poor souls. So if they do not believe in God, and they usually don't believe in an afterlife. Now, if they do believe in an afterlife in spite of not believing in God, then they usually believe either that they're going to maybe reincarnate as some other living thing, or maybe they'll think that their body, their not their body, but their consciousness kind of just dissipates into the ether, or they, in most of the time, they just think nothing. That's it. I die, I'm gone. My consciousness
Right.
isn't there anymore. It's no longer part of the universe, which is, to me, is kind of a depressing kind of thing. Some
Mm-hmm.
people who are atheists will say, "Oh no, it's kind of freeing because I don't have to worry about all that stuff afterwards." But I think it's depressing because
It
I
is.
I saw that effect when my dad passed away, because he was 72, so still relatively young,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of saw some things that were going on, but he wasn't in the hospital or anything like that. He died in his bed, um,
Right.
and of a heart failure. But
May
when
his
he
soul rest
died,
in peace.
yes,
Yeah, his soul rest in peace.
when he died, it was a hard thing, obviously, but it was a much harder thing for the, let's say, his grandchildren were very close to him, and
Right.
those grandchildren that were no longer strong in their faith had a very hard time of his death. And for myself, I would have times when I'd be crying, and then I'd be times when I'd be thinking of all my happy memories of him and knowing I would get to see him again someday. And it helped me through that, and I don't
Right.
think that's a false hope. I think that's a very real, genuine hope. So when we lose someone, it's close to us. It is hard because we know we won't see them for a long time, but it's not forever. So I think that our faith tradition obviously has a lot to do with how we see the afterlife, and whether we will still be around, and whether we can
Mhm.
communicate with others and all that. But that has varies with the traditions. So you've got some traditions that do believe in reincarnation, some that believe, like we do as Catholics, as heaven and purgatory and hell, and others that just believe in the straight up heaven and hell, and some that just think, oh, there's just heaven.
And
Everybody
some
go to heaven.
something it's just hocus pocus. They just don't believe it even the reality
You
even
know,
exists. The
the
thing is one big joke.
The funny thing
Yeah.
about hocus pocus is that that term is thought to have started as when the Protestant churches started separating from the Catholic Church, they would mock the Catholic Mass. Now, not all of the Protestant churches, because some of them had their own, they still celebrated Mass, like the Anglicans, for example. But
Right.
those that left that behind would mock the priest saying in Latin, um, the body of Christ. This is the body of Christ in Latin. It sounds a lot like hocus pocus. So that's it. Oh, it's a magical trick. They're doing their magical trick. It's sleight of hand,
Yes.
and then the magicians started using it as their magical term.
Great, great, great there. We're doing so good. Question number 9. Do you personally think that commitment to this truth or belief which is communication between the living and the dead, betters one's life, one's worldview, or one's level of morality? Why not?
Okay. Well, first I would just remind remind everyone that I do think the communication needs to be somewhat limited, that you should not be invoking the presence of the
Of the
dead,
dead.
but
Great.
that you can um, pray for them all the time. Yeah. But and they can sometimes send us some kind of a sign that they've heard us. People sometimes will see something that they don't normally see, like they're thinking about their loved one and they'll see that something in particular that they used to love, like certain kind of bird or plant, or butterfly or something like that, that seems to act differently than a normal one would, like they're trying to capture your attention, and perhaps that is their loved one asking God if they can communicate in some way that they're aware of them. But beyond that, I wouldn't go for that. And then you were saying, I'm sorry, I kind of forgot the actual question. Would you repeat it,
It
please?
says, do you think that commitment to this truth or belief that there is communication, some kind of communication with the living and dead, betters one's life or
Oh, okay.
one's
Right.
worldview or one's
Right.
level of morality?
Well, I think it may depend on the loved one that you're remembering, but I think definitely if someone you loved and that was a good person that tried, like say your parents, they tried to raise you well, they tried to inspire you to do
Oh,
good in the
yes,
world and everything. I
absolutely.
think that is going to inspire you to continue walking in the way that they tried to show you,
Right,
and that you like to do things in their honor. You
right.
want to do things in their honor. You want to continue the good work that they've done in the world. So I think definitely yes. Now, if unfortunately, if you had a terrible parent that was evil and everything, you might end up following their path too, unfortunately. But you don't have to. So you can be rescued from that and break that cycle. But yeah, if you're remembering someone that did good in the world and wanted you to live a life of joy and a life of bringing joy to other people, then I think it's going to inspire you to do that also. That's why we have memorials, to honor
Right.
people, to inspire us to live up to the kinds of ways that they lived their lives. So I'd say, yeah.
This brings a follow-up question. If the dead can see and hear us sometimes, do you think they have feelings for, like, they feel bad, like the child has been maltreated, or do they have remorse? Do they have that kind of feelings back there out in the other world? Do you think they, like your only child you left behind and is suddenly living a life you don't expect, or because you give her all your best?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just, this is a personal follow-up question.
Mm-hmm.
Do they feel some sense of sadness, or because some people have dreams, they dream and their parents will come, they'll see their dead loved ones in their dream
Mm-hmm.
talking to them. And some people say sometimes that too is not, it's not holy. It's a, could be demonic.
Mm-hmm.
Just what's your take on that before we do the last question?
I think that uh, I say this. This is so sort of odd, but again, I kind of lost the train after you started it. But you were saying, I'm so
It's
sorry.
okay. I think you've done so well
Yeah,
so far.
no,
My,
just you no,
was just
repeat
a,
that because I wanted to
it's just
answer
a,
that, but it's like I
it's a,
can't quite.
it's a follow-up question
Yeah,
to
right.
the
You go
question that
ahead, repeat it, please.
some believe that if the dead can see or hear
Okay,
us,
okay, I remember now. All right, you're saying, will they feel
they
sadness and
would, it
everything?
feel
Okay, all right,
sadness if
yeah,
we, maybe your dad left you a house that he worked his whole
right,
life
right. I got
to
it.
to pay and got it paid off, and in the moment he dies, you sell the house and you just go into
Yeah,
drinking and smoking or something. Do they have a sense of
yeah,
sadness, or they
yeah,
don't have any? But I believe, I mean, I don't want to
yeah.
say what I believe. I'm
Right,
asking
yeah,
the questions in the interest of
right,
the audience, because
right,
I know what, I know the truth, but I'm just
right.
asking these questions to.
Right. I That's a difficult question because I think about that at times and I think if they're in heaven, how could they have any sadness? I don't think it's
Ooh,
possible. I don't think it's possible.
Mikey, you know that.
but I
I
think
like
they
that. I like that. I like that.
I
I
think they
like that
care.
answer.
I think they care about us and they're going to pray for us. But remember also that suffering in this world is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, we don't want to suffer and we don't want other people to suffer, but that's part of this life, that there is suffering in this life. We're not promised a painless life. If you look at the saints that we recognize are in heaven, you look at their lives, they weren't just
Yes.
picnics all every day. They
No.
had a lot of joy in their lives, but they had joy in spite of their troubles. They had
Like
joy in
Saint
spite of their
Francis of
troubles.
Assisi, he gave up everything he had
Mhm.
and live a humble, poor
Yeah.
life just to,
Yeah.
relate with the poor. Saint Francis.
Yeah. And he was a rich person because his
Yeah,
father was a rich merchant. So
but he
he
gave it
gave up
all
all that.
away. Hmm.
Yeah. And he kind of he died younger than he should have probably because he
Hmm.
did so many things to kind of abuse his body with pain and things like wearing things that were scratchy and uncomfortable and sleeping on
Hmm.
the ground and things like that
Right.
because he was trying to offer his suffering for other people,
People
but he kind of thought he might have gone a little too
too
far.
far. Yeah, and the truth.
Yeah. So yeah,
Wow.
I think that
Awesome.
they're concerned about us and they're praying for us,
Hmm.
but I don't think that they can somehow. I don't see how they can experience anything but joy in heaven.
Sadness if they're in heaven,
Yeah.
but if they're maybe in purgatory, I don't know. But
In
it's,
purgatory, it's questionable whether they can are aware
okay,
of us or not. They may or may not be. Some
be
people think they can actually pray for us. They can't get themselves out of purgatory by praying for themselves, but they can pray for us. But other than that, I'm talking about great saints have debated this issue. So I don't know which way that really is, but we want to pray for them for sure. But we
right
don't know how much they're aware of us. But when they get to heaven, yep, then.
then. Also, Miss Margie, last and final question. What then would be your final word to all of our listeners all across the world? Because this is live on YouTube. This is live on all
Mhm,
Facebook and Twitter and whatever you. What
mhm.
is your final word to our listeners, listening audience, and also make your conclusion as well in
Okay.
this question?
Yeah, I kind of would just sum that up with as far as communicating with the dead. I would say uh, pray for them because we don't know where they are. And if they are in that purification period, we can help them with our prayers and we can help them get to heaven faster by offering our prayers and our sufferings for them, for their sake. And God listens to that and he hears us. And it's hard to understand exactly how that all works. I just know it does. That we can pray for them and be helpful to them. So we want to do that. And we want to pray for all the souls in purgatory, for the people that we know that have gone before us, but we also want to pray for those people that have no one praying for them. Because again, not everybody in purgatory has friends or family behind that know they need to be praying for them. So we
That's
need
a
to
great
offer.
point, Margie. That's a great
Yeah.
point. A lot of
Yeah.
people die lonely. They die a
Yeah.
lonely life. They
Mhm.
live their last the last days on earth alone. They have no
Yeah, but
family,
even they could have even been surrounded by a loving family and friends, but if
and
their
still,
tradition does not tell them to pray for them, and they automatically assume, oh, they're in heaven with God. I have instructions on my computer for things about after I'm gone for our children, and one of those things I say is when you're setting up the funeral, please ask the priest to make sure he's praying for us and not praying for me, my husband, the same thing. That no assumptions that we're in heaven. Please don't assume we're in heaven because
we're going
I
straight
don't
to
know if
heaven.
I'm
Yeah,
going to make it directly to heaven.
heaven. Or you're
I'm
gonna
going
be
to
in
try, but
purgatory.
I think it's more likely I'm going to have some things that still have to be worked on, and so I want people praying for me, and I want to be praying for other people. So that's the first
Amen.
thing. Pray for them. The other thing is again, stay completely away from any attempt to actually use a seance or any other kind of spiritual, um, uh, I don't know, manipulation to try to invoke the dead to be present to you because we don't get that privilege. We don't get that. Now, someone from the other side, if God tells them you may, you know, encourage your family member by speaking in their heart or something. I think that's a possibility, but it's not something you go out looking for, because it will not be them. It will be a demon answering and pretending to be them. And you don't want to get involved in that. If you do, or if you know someone who has been seemingly influenced by demons, then call an exorcist. Go to a Catholic church, because that's where everybody goes. They don't go to an exorcist anywhere else. They go to the Catholic church and ask for a priest, because that seems to be their specialty. I mean, as far as exorcists are probably going to be Catholic priests. So go to them, and go. You can look in the phone book, or, you know, online, look for your local Catholic diocese if you don't have a church that you can get to or whatever, and call them and ask them for help, because you need serious
Great.
help. You can't do that. You can't get rid of a demon on your own. Once you're possessed, you can't get rid of it. So you need help. Go
You
to an
need help.
exorcist and get the help you need.
Right. Awesome. This has
Yeah.
been amazing, Miss Margie. This has been amazing and enlightening, you know. It's great. I'm glad you made this. You came to do this for the whole world to
We'll be
get on.
probably talking about this all through the next walk we have.
I know,
We'll
right?
go really deep in it then, you know.
So to final point from you, I know you're into some private businesses and all that. I'm going to give you the opportunity to tell my followers where they can. What do you do as a Relive International distributor,
Mhm.
and where they can briefly, because we're 47 minutes,
Right. Oh, yeah. Mhm.
briefly,
Oh, okay.
briefly, briefly, where they can, if they're in Missouri, or or
Yeah.
the
Okay. You
international.
don't have to be in Missouri. Okay. So
Can.
I'll really quickly then. We've been with Relive International since 2006. They've been around since 1988. It's a nutritional science company. We have incredible scientists that are really, as they say, on the cutting edge of nutritional science. I mean, we have things that no one else has. So, patented products are very rare in the nutrition business, and we have that. There's so many different nutritional supplements out there, but in the years we've been with Relive, for 17 years now, we have seen people get visible health results using these nutritional supplements. So I can't go into all the specifics, obviously, but your body's gonna do better if it has the right nutrition. So the access to our personal website, I'm just going to spell it out kind of. It's
uh,
You want to start with the HTTPS. Definitely start with that to make sure you get to the right place. So HTTPS colon, and then you have 2 slashes, and then you have my name and my husband's together, Margie and Bill, and that's spelled MargieAndBill, with no underline underscores or anything, just those letters, Margie and Bill dot relive, which is RELIV.com. And that's our personal website. So then they can explore that and connect with me. We operate internationally, and we're in a lot of different countries, but I'm not going to try to list them all here, since you say we're
right.
running out of time.
Amazing, amazing, Miss Margie.
We
49
are not in
minutes.
any African countries, unfortunately. So
Yes, yes, that's
we're in
unfortunate,
Europe
but it's
and
an amazing product, guys.
North
I've
America.
tried it. I've tried one. Margie gave me one yesterday, and I'm already feeling better in my knee. I'm gonna get on there and order some more. It's a great product for especially for arthritis and pain in the knee and all that. And she's already put. If you replay this, you listen to her website where you can actually go and get
Yeah.
some of her
And
products.
my contact information is on there too. So they can even contact me through my phone number or my email address, or through my
Right.
website.
Awesome. Thank you, Miss Margie, for doing this.
Yeah, I'm glad
For,
to be
for,
here.
I
It's been
hope it's
fun.
blessed a lot of people.
Yeah.
Thank you so
So,
much.
all right. You're
Have a
welcome.
good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Guys, it was interesting, enlightening. One thing Margie stressed on is do not try to invoke the dead through seance. Do not try to invoke the dead through seance. Especially, I see that happening a lot in Africa, where we believe. Let me go back a little bit for the topic. Can the dead hear or see the living? after this podcast? The answer is yes. The dead can see or can hear the living, depending on where they're at. So, but a lot of people try to invoke the dead. They believe they want to talk to the dead, so they just go and do whatever some religion, like you said, the Mexicans do and the Africans do. To we invoke the dead. She said, do not do that. Do not be in the habit of doing that a lot, because chances are you're not actually invoking your dead loved ones. It could be demonic. If you feel you're possessed, she said, she advised, go meet your clergyman. If you're Catholic, of course, you're going to go to the priest. If you're non-Catholic, you have to go meet your clergyman and seek some spiritual help or deliverance, as we call it. This is the end of the show. This brings us to the end of the show. I want to say thank you to all my followers out there. Please do me a favor. Please subscribe to my channel, subscribe and share. I promise you there's going to be a lot more intriguing, enlightening, and uplifting and comforting shows that in the subsequent weeks. This channel is here to stay. Talking Drum, Talking Drum is here to stay. So please, thank you and have a wonderful evening, wonderful afternoon, wonderful day, depending on where you're at. And God bless you. Have a great day. It has been an amazing show. I have been touched, I have been enlightened, and I hope you have benefited from this show as well. Thank you.